Hey, welcome to episode 183 of the Titanforge podcast. I'm Dratnos, joined by Trell
Hey.
and Tuttles. Why do you do that every week?
It's like once a month, okay?
I was thinking, I try and kind of start with each of you equally on, introduced vibe, but I want to go back and like see actually if there's a bias because each week I try and think like, oh, which one did I do last week? Oh, and then I try and flip it if I can remember. So I don't know if I've done a good job. That'd be an interesting thing to analyze. This week we have a few different things to talk about.
Only a few though, not that much.
So there's a little bit of news and stuff, and then we're doing Halls of Infusion as our dungeon this week. So that'll be in the later part of the show. And if you're watching on like YouTube or whatever, you can skip ahead in the chapters if you want to go straight to listening to that. It'll be probably like 30 minutes in or something.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like you said, Tuttle's a little bit less news this week, and we're gonna keep to a minimum our augmentation, meta discussion. We only have one small thing related to that, which is there was this cool post on Reddit that came out with some cool graphs, including this one. So there was an original one that had all the specs in alphabetical order, and then this that has them separated by DPS, tank, and healer. That was basically like the top 2,000 Dem Plus runs each week, how many of each spec there were. And you can see a pretty vibrant collage here of different specs. And then we get down to the last 3 weeks, and you can see all of a sudden the incident hitting the metagame here. So a cool way of visualizing this data, and I think a pretty strong rejection of the "it's always like this" thing that I've seen a little bit.
I was reading Dorky's Discord, and he actually made a pretty good point. It's not necessarily that it actually is like this most of the time, but the problem was we went from one of the best metas ever, and Dragonflight Season 1 was pretty good, to one of probably the worst, of the worst metas, or just like an average meta, right?
It is the worst. If you look at there's this person who's been tweeting a bunch of statistics, Banshee IRL on Twitter, and one of the things they posted had a percent of top runs that were the top specs, and this season was like 90. A lot of seasons would do like 70 or something. Good seasons would be like 50 or something, but this is by far the worst that it's ever looked by this, especially again instant at the start of the season.
I mean, we don't need to talk about the classes. I think the classes are almost like not even relevant to the discussion. It's more just like, holy fuck, the meta.
Yeah,
this is kind of weird.
Which, but I do think it's really cool to see the data visualized this way. I think this is I hope that this particular graph or whatever can continue, and also I'd love to see it get extrapolated backwards to Shadowlands and BFA and stuff.
Oh my god, I would love to see like Dragonflight Season 1 too. Also,
this is Dragonflight Season 1.
I like that you can tell that a good portion of the population was prepping these classes the week before, or like a couple weeks before the patch hit, because suddenly the HPAL and the bear width of the bars increases right before and all that. And also, look at the HPAL. It almost completely covers the entire healer.
Wait, it is Dragonflight Season 1. Okay, actually,
yeah, Dragonflight Season 1 is up at the top, and then this is, you can see where Rep Pally starts getting played is is 10-1-7 or whatever.
That's good. Cool.
But yeah, it's
you can see the Prot Paladin.
Yeah, you can see the warriors shrinking and the paladins growing, but like, you can still see the
normal,
other
right?
colors, right? Like, I got title that season playing this shrinking warrior, and it wasn't that bad, right? It was like 1 key level worse. And we were playing like the Evoker, which wasn't that bad, and we were playing a Warlock and stuff, and like all of that was fine, even though they weren't the biggest bars. But now you come to this season as like, look at these little slivers of other specs.
I love the growth of vengeance, so that it just dies.
Yeah,
which again, like, it's a cool way of visualizing the data. It's the same kind of stuff we've been talking about for the past few weeks, so not a topic we will spend much time on here, but wanted to highlight this post. We'll link it in the description and stuff as well.
Side note, do we want to do a Q&A episode next weekend? Or next
Sure.
week, since I feel like it's probably about the right time, where it's like we're to lull content-wise on the patch.
Yeah, that sounds good. So send in your questions. The Discord's a good place for it. Twitter, Also a good place.
Yeah.
We'll do a bunch of those next week. That'll be good. I think we'll probably do another dungeon next week as well. So half dungeon, half Q&A or something.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm expecting.
We also have TGP news. We have Group B finished up, and Group C coming next week, I guess tomorrow for us right now, and potentially ongoing depending on when you are listening to this. So should be pretty exciting. The Echo group finally here. Where's Echo? Where's Echo? Here's the answer. But a lot of other really good teams here. Sheesh, team you may recognize as well.
I think last minute is I would say pretty underrated. Like they're a team that they posted the fastest time for 28 Ultimon, and then they ended up having, I want to say, a 29 freehold. So it was a little bit lower than some of the other top teams that ended up grinding out that freehold with the Hard and Sweet Cannon Barrage. But the fact that they had the number one fastest time in Ultimon, I think this could be a team that maybe could play spoiler this weekend.
That's cool. Yeah,
Wait, that's not El Bro's team, right?
No,
Or was that Last Moment?
That was Last Moment. Yeah.
Holy,
Yeah,
there's so many teams with similar names.
It's like the AJ team.
Oh yeah, rank 1 healer last season on this.
Yeah. That was the group that got like rank 1 last season.
Yeah,
Even
and then,
they were playing a Disc Priest.
Yeah. Overall, definitely a pretty exciting looking weekend. So it should be pretty cool. Last
Empyrean
weekend
is out, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think they will get the old 19th seed replacement thing. So still, I mean, the groups, all three have had like kind of crazy strong teams 3 through 6 or whatever, or at least teams 3 through 5, and all the groups have been kind of wild. So it should be very fun to watch. And we have got Ruby Life Pools as the Season 1 dungeon coming up. We had Algathar last weekend, which I actually thought Algathar was really good to see again. I think it worked really nicely. And it is weird because you can't go and play it, though, right? That's kind of the...
I think it's interesting to watch, but then it sucks that I can't play it. That's kind of how I view it. I'm like, wow, this is actually super cool to see, like how it has been done and how it's being played. And it's just like, well, can't go play it. So I guess we only watch it for entertainment value.
Yeah, it's interesting how, like, last season we were kind of low power, right? And this season we're like obviously absurdly high power. And it's kind of interesting how the dungeons sort of, it looks like it feels pretty different between those two states, right? Like the hard bits have kind of moved around in those dungeons, and it's less about like living the boss fight or whatever, and more about the totality of it and the speed and stuff, which I don't know. It's cool. It's cool to watch. Yeah, no thundering. And I do think we will get to play Algathar probably again in season 3 or 4, so
hopefully.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a suspicion that, I guess I expected that they were going to bring them back in season 3, but I didn't know that for sure. I don't know.
I'm good with Algathar and Azure Vault coming back. I don't know about Ruby Life Pools. That one still has a bad taste in my mouth, but I like the other two.
I think RLP is at least better for TGP broadcast than Nokud would be. I don't think that Nokud... I think that Nokud is actually a dungeon that's actually kind of fun to play, but it fucking sucks to watch. Like, it is actually just miserable to watch, and it's 40 minutes.
And also, Nokud had a really generous timer, right? In push situations, so bringing that to the... I mean, maybe that key goes really high, depending on if they put Tyrannical or Fortified on it. I mean... I don't know. I think it could be fun to watch. It definitely was one that was more fun to play than I thought over the season. All right. We also saw a little bit of comp diversity last weekend. We saw a little bit of divergence from the blob of the meta. We saw a enhanced shaman and a prot warrior and Nelth Slayer, and then we saw a couple of other like teams doing comfort picks like for funsies or whatever on the last day, but there was a team that was unironically playing. There was Last Moment that was playing Enhance in a lot of dungeons and Prot Warrior in one, which was cool to see. The Prot Warrior and Nelth Slayer is just like that. Actually, just unironically good.
That's just
Spell
good.
Reflect is really good, so that was cool. But then the Enhanced Shaman was kind of filling in for the Fire Mage, and In some ways, it had some strengths relative to the Fire Mage too in some of those dungeons, which is cool.
I think you started to see the issues of the Prot Warrior pretty late, especially once they started dipping into that 31. It was like the Prot Warriors getting absolutely clapped down by this 31 trash that a Bear Druid would also get owned by, but a little bit less hard. Like particularly the Hulks in that dungeon smoke Prot Warrior. Like that spec can't tank those mobs.
Like Prot Warrior can do everything else in that dungeon just fine. Just
Yeah.
the piercing shards dot.
Yeah. The dot. It's just the dot, yeah.
All right. In other news, we have the Traders Tender. Have you guys been following the Traders Tender?
I watched a YouTube video by you.
Yeah.
about
So
this.
here's what's happened. There's a new Corsage pack available on the shop for $5. That, in addition to giving you 2 wrist appearances, which are not like they're 3D wrist appearances, right? Like they're pretty cool. They've got these 3D flowers on them. They also gives you 200 Traders Tender, which represents a little bit of a movement. Like there hadn't been Traders Tender in a bundle except for technically bundled with Dragonflight. There were like they gave an extra 500 Tender to everybody who owned Dragonflight, so technically it was bundled with Dragonflight or whatever retroactively, but effectively this is the first time that they have done this with the Traders Tender. There's definitely some accusations flying of kind of trying to like put the frog in boiling water and turn up the heat so they don't realize they're getting cooked, which with the trading post, which
toward like a battle pass model, is that
and to like making people with the like FOMO buy all of these packs that they otherwise wouldn't because they have the tender in them.
I feel like this is I feel like the trading post, like normally more often than not, you're able to buy most of what you want on there, and obviously there are going to be some week or some months that you're not able to buy whatever you want, but like I think that getting up in arms about people being able to buy cosmetics that were already on the trading post is a bit strange to me.
Yeah, so I will say Blizzard didn't really do themselves any favors with how they communicated that they were. So like the Ian gave an interview a couple months ago where it was like, we're not going to sell it directly, but we've in the past included stuff like pets with our expansion bundles, and we're going to change that over towards Trader's Tender, right? But then the first time it actually shows up, it's not in like an expansion bundle in place of a pet or something. It's a $5 pack that most people who purchase this pack will probably be going after the tender rather than the bracers. So
yeah. Side note, did you see the Mog that they released this week? It was so fucking ugly.
Yeah, the $15 one, right? Like the Watchman pack or whatever. Yeah,
it is hideous Mog. Like,
yeah, I don't know. I don't think that I think that if there's a game that's releasing cosmetics that you don't care for at a price point that you think is too high or whatever, that shouldn't really bother you at all. And it seems like I've seen some posts of people like flaming WoW for that pack in particular, which I mean, I think it's funny that it does because it does look pretty bad, but also just like I don't know, it's whatever.
I do think
right?
it rubs people the wrong way that you're paying for a base game plus a subscription model on top of it, plus they have MTX inside of it.
Right. That If you were telling
a
time traveler from 2006 that this is what World of Warcraft, or that you'd play a game with this monetization model, they'd be like, oh, this sucks, because they'd be just getting back from their angry letter writing session about the horse armor in Oblivion. But nowadays, it's like, this is how games monetize, right? Like, if you compare to inflation what the WoW sub costs, it's a lot less in real terms than it was in 2004, right? And the excess is made up for in MTX costs.
I will say though that like most games have very different models than this. A subscription model is pretty much unheard of these days for a game.
Final Fantasy has the same model. Lost Ark has a more aggressive like there are games that are free to play, but then they have more aggressive stores with power in them, or with like more aggressive selling in them. Is there an MMO out there that just does sub and no MTX? or that just does. I guess
Just
Guild
as
Wars
base
does
game?
reasonably good, but even Guild Wars, you're buying like bag slots and stuff for.
What is BDO?
I don't know the BDO monetization model. That's
No
potentially
idea.
fair. But I don't think you're gonna find an example of a game that is like I mean I think it goes to show like a lot of people the Baldur's Gate game that just came out. It's been posted around a lot. This screenshot of like one line from their FAQ where it's like, "Are you guys going to sell any MTX?" And they're like, "No, we think a game should just be a game that you buy and you get everything in it." And that's like a celebrated, but that's the exception, not the rule, right? Almost every game has some of this kind of garbage in it.
I think that I've moved to a point where as long as it's not like player power behind it, I'm fine with MTX, right? Because I'm not like obligated to buy any of it, right? And at least just speaking World of Warcraft terms, the WoW token kind of covers everything if you have gold for it.
So the existence of the WoW token turns every piece of paid MTX into something you can buy with gold, but also vice versa. It turns everything that you can buy with gold into something you can buy with dollars, which
yes,
is.
But I would never
icky.
buy something. I wouldn't buy any of that with dollars, right? I would only ever buy it with gold.
Right, but like it,
that's not everybody though.
If you have an issue with a $5, cosmetic pack in the shop, you should also have an issue with anything that costs like 300k that gets put in the game because that's a WoW token that somebody could buy in the same way, right?
I will say I prefer like free to play game models that have MTX inside of them or like battle passes or whatever.
I agree. I think the Path of Exile model, if you guys have ever played it, is really cool. Like especially the way you can change the look of your spells. If WoW somehow incorporated that would be sick. Like a glyph system, but you could just get way more options than there currently are.
I mean, I'm wearing Path of Exile shirt right now. I love PoE. I
Exalt.
That is the free game that I've spent the most money on in my life as well. It's because the MTX is so good in that game, and the changing the way your spells look is so great. I think WoW is, if WoW did that, that would be pretty exciting. But also, it would be a reversal of their current like, we want our spells to be like easily visually identified and stuff because
of PvP,
and I think also
because
PvE. But mostly
okay.
PvP, yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I that would be cool though. I don't know if they made stuff like Green Fire, but for other spells and stuff, I don't know if I'd be able to resist. That would be really cool.
I will say I think that it's difficult to get like a younger generation of players into the game with the current model that you have for the game.
I think the monthly sub is the hard bit, not the
$60.
MTX in the shop though, right? Like,
it's also not the $60 of the base game. It's the monthly sub. I think is pretty prohibitive for people who are under the age of 18 probably and don't have like a full-time job.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I started, that was always the hard bit. Was like I could get a game. But like getting a recurring monthly sub going when you're little is that's not easy. So I agree with that. I don't know. It's an interesting topic. I think that I don't know. I don't think it represents a big change, and I do think that it's nice that they've put in this trading post that you get a bunch of free currency per month, and if you want more than the amount that you get for free per month, I think that means they're doing a pretty good job of like creating good and compelling MTX. But it is also a little bit like there are some people that feel obligated to like collect everything they can. Those people already didn't like that they couldn't get everything per month in the trading post, but now knowing that they could get more if they were buying all of the bundles every time they came out, I'm sure that there's going to be people that do buy every single Trader Sender bundle, which is that predatory? It's tough to say.
I think the trading post is cool.
Yeah, I mean the Transmogrifier pet this month is a banger, or a toy this month. That's that thing.
Dude, they've had some sick toys this expansion. Like I'm not even normally a toy person in this game, but the what's it called? The recalibrator on the ground. That's like the best toy in the world.
And that one just didn't get like that's just that's not a shop thing. Yeah.
So the Transmogrifier that used to be $20 is in the trading post.
Yeah.
Oh.
I think Ethereal Transmogrifier.
Like the thing that you click and you turn to Blackhand occasionally?
No, that's the Transmorpher. There's now a Transmogrifier toy that you can use to open up Transmog wherever you want. Like as a toy.
I understand now.
So you got to change your Transmog before pulling Rashok? You can do that now, because there's obviously the Transmog mount, but that you have to go outside for.
There was the engineering transmog things you could draw up too.
Yeah,
it's just like
the
that,
closets.
right?
I've used those closets before when
Yeah.
I've I had a character carrying around some of those to, change mog, but that's annoying. Toy much better.
Yeah, sure.
All right. I guess that's it for discussion of that. I did make a video on it as well, as you said, Tettles, but pretty much all covered in there. We're covered in in how we just talked about it.
Yeah, keep player power out of it though, please God.
I mean, yeah, like, so with the existence of the WoW token, you can buy player power every patch, but you can't do it in like in a way that is relevant for high end play. Really, I mean, you can buy title, right? Like you can buy title with the WoW token, right?
True.
But you can't really buy your way into like a Hall of Fame guild. You can buy a carry to a boss kill, but you can't really like it's not like if you are a high-end player, you need to buy the pack every month, which is, I think that's sort of the Lost Ark model is more like that, where those players are involved in the purchase of power. And yeah, obviously if that sort of stuff got added to the shop, that would be a very, very negative thing for all of us. Although, again, we would buy it with in-game currency with WoW tokens for the most part, right? Like, unless it was... Obviously, that would cause a spiraling cost change in the WoW token. But yeah, obviously, hope they don't.
I do think that they've prevented the pay-to-win model from becoming a thing pretty well. Like, they've even limited buying BOEs for the first few weeks of the tier now, because that was like the closest thing to pay-to-win that there was, in my opinion. So as long as they keep that philosophy up, I think we're good.
Well, you didn't even need to buy BOEs this season. This season was like real chill.
Yeah.
Sure, but there have been seasons where it's like very, very lucrative if you can get BOEs, like the corruption season.
I think this season we still spent like 4 or 5 mil on random avoidance and socketed stuff and things. So, because you could upgrade it to 441 with the hero track. So, yeah, it is nice though that they've done the mythic BOE change. At least that one is good. I don't know. It'll be an interesting thing to keep track of. Obviously, anything like this, there's always the slippery slope argument. So we'll see how far down that slope they slide. All right, let's move on to tip of the week. My tip of the week is not really a tip. This is something that was sent in by a very cool person on Discord that sent me basically like a study they did on Shield of the Righteous uptime. And I'll link to this GitHub.
What the fuck is this?
So this is a Shield of the Righteous uptime between Shadowlands and Dragonflight. I don't know if this is keys or raid. Actually, not 100% sure. But okay, no, it's keys. It's Algathar versus Halls of Atonement, apparently.
Okay.
Is it taking like upper level keys? Like
I think so. Yeah.
Players?
And basically, you can see in Dragonflight, there's higher Shield of the Righteous uptime than there was in Shadowlands, even though a holy power got taken off of Avenger's Shield, which I thought was interesting and pretty cool. So neat little. I'm not sure what big conclusions to draw from this, other than the fact that the same that we saw with like them needing to do that healer nerf twice. I think the addition of the talent system really put a lot of power into classes and specs, even ones where they came in with like the brakes on the holy power on Avenger Shield, for instance. You can still see Shield of the Righteous got better, not worse, in Dragonflight.
I mean, tanks as a whole, I feel like I would say across the board, they're the strongest they ever have been.
Yeah, that's true for the most part. They certainly have more options than they used to. And also, side note, I really enjoy Prot Paladin when you have high uptime on Soder. When you don't have high uptime, it's just like playing Warrior without shield block. You just fall over as soon as Shield of Righteous ends.
With it being this high, you also still get to cast some Word of Glories, right? Whereas whenever your Shield of the Righteous uptime is like really low, all of your holy power has to go into Shield of the Righteous, right? And
yeah, that was especially true before they did the post rework nerf on Prot Paladin. So like now you kind of have to spend all of your holy power on Soder. You can't really afford to spend an extra Word of Glory on somebody, or you're going to drop it. But before the nerf coming out of the last season, you could spend like maybe 2 or 3 wogs per cycle and still keep Soder up. It was great.
I think a big thing with Prot Paladin that's interesting is like Sometimes you'll just watch a Prot Paladin tank without mitigation up at all, and they'll just be like spending a lot of their holy power and word of glory. I mean, this is more of a thing like last season or like earlier on in this season. But
Yeah.
just being able to watch them like tank without mit is like kind of crazy.
Okay. Trell, what is your tip of the week?
So mine has to do with mages. So I included some resources for all 3 mage specs, since they have just been given pretty big reworks. There's a lot of people looking at them. The Frost Mage guide especially is from my friend Manather in my guild right now, and he's got a really, really good video on it.
Okay.
So if anyone's like looking to play any of these specs for the first time or just coming back to them after quite a while, I'd strongly suggest looking at one of these videos.
Yeah, Fire Mage one is from a guildie of mine, and then there's Arcane. There's 3 different mages that have made videos that you're featuring here. We'll link them all, and any new wizards. Which you're a new wizard is how you found these, right? You leveled your mage recently.
Yeah, I just leveled it yesterday. Dude, I've geared so many characters this patch, but my mage is by far the fastest. I hit 70 like at 9 o'clock last night, and I'm already 4:30 today.
That's cool. Yeah, it is wild how fast you can gear with like a heroic, and then like anything. The heroic, I think the heroic is the best part because you get so many worms crests from it too, and you don't get those unless you're spamming like the keys that the 11 to 15s or whatever.
Yeah,
so
it's definitely
finding a
very
way to
helpful.
those is like the biggest thing, I think.
And I pugged my own key as a DPS. People always say, it's really hard to pug your own key if you're not a tank player, but honestly, I pugged it from a 2 to a 18 in a straight shot, and it really wasn't that bad. I strongly urge anybody trying to gear your character to just put your key in the group finder.
That's cool. I'm glad that worked out.
I feel like
that's sick.
I feel like people have pugged some insanely high keys this season on NA. NA normally terrible for pugging keys. This season I feel like it's been better than it has been.
Well,
I think
yeah.
so too. Yeah.
Your experience may vary depending on if you're playing one of the 5 golden specs or the 35 other ones, though, to be fair.
Yeah, sure. Okay, that's
yeah.
I was just referring to like the level of the keys that are in Group Finder now as opposed to in the past relative to title.
Definitely some very high keys in Group Finder, although your ability to get into those may vary compared to previous seasons.
Yeah, sure.
All right, Tettles, what are we looking at in your clip of the week here?
Oh, okay. So take a look at the top left. So one of the dungeons this weekend was Freehold, and NA's Last Hope, which is a team with like Dorky, it's the NA team with like Dorky on it. They did a really interesting poll where they grabbed all of this Freehold trash, and then you can look at the spot that they're about to stand in right here, and instead of having to dodge the cast from the what's that thing called? The Sea Spout.
Sea Spout and Duelist Dash.
Traps.
You get to dodge both of those and Rat Traps. Yeah, it's nasty.
That spot owns.
Yeah.
This basically allowed them to combine both pulls that you would normally do after the first boss.
Yeah. That's a sick spot for sure. If you're interested as well, Zyro put it, or there's a video on the WoW YouTube channel, the official like Warcraft one that came out earlier today, where Zyro like broke down this whole run. So that's another cool thing you might like if you're interested in stuff like that. Cool, very cool spot. Let's move on to Halls of Infusion. Almost exactly where I said it would be in the episode.
Oh my god, 30 minutes in.
Almost exactly. Wow. Okay, so Halls of Infusion. What are we? I think the biggest thing about this dungeon, a lot of runs die at the very start of this place, right? Like just from the start, there's a lot of lethal trash in these first few pulls, right?
True. Well, if you have some kind of form of the meta specs, they aren't so bad anymore. But before, pretty much every tank was getting railed by these mobs, yeah. And on top of that, they have so many interrupts.
I think it's not even just about the tanks too, but I think in general, just like the containment apparatus, and what's going on at the very beginning of the dungeon, those mobs suck. Like the containment apparatus is the circle mob that does the beam on players. That is always top priority to kill, and I would rarely, if never, pull 2 of them at once.
Yeah,
True.
You do pull several in like the first pull or whatever, but if you want to do this like big old pull around in the first room into the side, but whoever gets targeted by those beams, is in a lot of danger. You do have some counterplay to it. You can freedom somebody to save their lives. You
Yeah.
can't actually be targeted by it if you have freedom on you, but they don't stop recasting. They'll just recast on somebody else. And so if you freedom one person, the other 4 people are going to be having more damage dealt amongst them.
In addition to that, you can actually, if you walk away from the defenders, right, as they're going to try to put the bleed on you as a tank, like you can make the bleed not go on anybody, right? Or you can make them cancel the cast.
If you like backstep as they're starting their frontal, they finish the windup and then they just stop and continue walking to you instead of channeling it.
Yeah.
That's why I'm moving quite a bit in this clip for the watchers out there.
I will say that another big thing is make sure that you have ACC going into the pulls that are in combat with one another. That's actually a pretty important piece because the defenders will slam the demo shout like first global. So make sure that you have like either a holy paladin like running in with you with blinding light. You know, you like pre-drop a cap totem. Your bear has incapacitating roar. Like you're ready with a dragon's breath. Like a bunch of other stuff, right? Just make sure that you're like on top of the pack and ready to CC the first cast of the demo shout, or alternatively you can just kick it. But I find that CCs are typically better for the defenders.
Yeah, it's definitely a good play to just like have a plan to CC all the demoralizing shout casts and instead kick the expulse cast because that's the real danger.
Yeah, expulse is on a 20-second CD, right? So all melee, anybody with a 20-second kick can get every single expulse. So that's how you should assign your interrupts here.
Yeah.
You can also chain quite a bit in this area. It's basically like as soon as you kill the containment orb, I call it the ball. As soon as you kill the ball, you just pull the next pack, basically.
Yeah.
And you can keep doing this. You do 2 or 3 balls in the first pull, depending on your level of skill and if it's fortified or tyrannical. Like you probably don't want to do 3 on 4. That's insane. But otherwise, you just like pull a pack, kill the single ball in it, and then move on.
Yeah. We like to go left. That's kind of the default route that you'll see high key people do because that gets you access to the cheat death orb, which you do need somebody in your group to have 25 engineering to activate. Very worth.
Isn't there a pull with triple containment apparatus also on the right?
Yeah, that is another problem with going right. Is there is a 3-ball, little 3-ball that you have to deal with.
Those mobs weren't even worth count at the beginning of the season. That was the most ridiculous pack known to man.
Yeah, so for that reason, we don't like to go that way. But depending on your route, and I don't know if you do it in this run, you often will still get the shortcut activated, which you do here. But once you if you just fight this pull here that's just to the side of just out of your way if you went left, the first one kind of past the door to the first boss, you will still have the shortcut if you need it later. You just have to go around the long way to get to it. So,
Yeah, it's also worth noting the reason people go left for another thing is because there's the cheat death engineering bonus you get there. It does have a range, so everyone has to be kind of near the console whenever the engineer presses it.
I think line as well, right? You gotta. I think you might.
Oh yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about line, but I know that you need to be inside the ring, that circles the where the cheat death orb is.
Just be near it. Yeah. I don't know. I haven't. Maybe it's range. Maybe it's line. It could just be range. You could be right.
Once you're outside of that ring, you're not getting it. Yeah, we got to be close.
Then this pull, the one right before the first boss, is pretty nasty. It's 2-ball, 3 defender, which you can skip if you do some fancy bop invis stuff. But usually on live we just pull this thing, but it is hard.
I would say mark one of the containment apparatus mobs. Focus that one down, then immediately try to kill the other containment apparatus mob, and then once you're just with the defenders, you can likely take the defenders into the first boss. The defenders by themselves don't do a ton. You just you have to watch their demo shot as they walk in. But once the containment apparatuses die, this pull is mostly a non-issue.
Yeah, true. It's also worth noting the reason why we pull so much in this area is because you can skip a ton of the dragon hallway with Mind Soothe. And so we kind of overpull in the first area to be able to skip more dragons.
I mean, you're only overpulling by 1 pack, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
That is true, but we want to get count from the rest of the dungeon is definitely good because that hallway is nasty. Mm-hmm. First boss with the Shadow Priest, usually you just mass a spell, the debuffs, move the boss around in a nice little circle. What do you guys think about cooldown usage on this boss? How any thought, any advice or theory on that?
Offensives, I would say you just kind of rip them on CD and you just try to push the boss. Like, you can kind of get away with multiple phases of his static shock or spark volley AOE or whatever the AOE is called.
Yep.
The debuffs are a bit more of a pain, especially once he has like 20 stacks. But in general, I would say just try to optimize for like highest overall damage on this guy, which typically involves you just pressing your CDs on CD. Now there is a question as to where you're pressing your lust if you get your lust up here, and that's kind of like a key level thing. That's not necessarily like a strat.
Yeah,
thing.
it's generally like in high keys at least. It's like as soon as it comes off cooldown, because you lust the very first pull, and then you're gonna lust here in P2 at some point if you make the time for it. It's kind of awkward in high Eternical keys. Like on 27, you might not even get a lust on this boss.
Yeah, I mean it's not like a super big issue because the secondary lust that you can do on the trash pull after this boss is never really bad. Like
Yeah,
we're
you
not
just press
upset about
that.
it. So yeah, I would say for lust, like if you get a lust and the boss is at 10% HP or something like that, I would rip it. If he's like 3%, I probably wouldn't press, and I would just use it on the pull that's after this guy.
As far as strategy goes for this boss, I think it's probably worth mentioning that you should stack as a group. And I always put down 2 markers and just say go back between these every time, so that people always are kind of in the same spot for their healer, and they also can stack those pools. Like multiple pools ticking you doesn't do extra damage; it just makes it more controlled.
Meta comp wise, I would say that like use stamp roar on the first movement, and then have your Augevoker rescue your Spriest on the second one, and then your Spriest can grip like the Holy Paladin out of the puddle, and then like third is going to be probably like Zephyr plus major defensives, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think you might even be able to get back to roar with 1 minute roar. Yeah,
I've always played 2. So I'm not 100% sure on that.
Yeah, I can't remember if it lines up with every other. I think it might.
I think it might. Well, yeah.
Okay, then do you guys like to go right or left after boss 1?
I do think that right is okay. Even still, after watching Mandatory last weekend, I think that right is faster. I don't think that I would advise many, if any, groups going right unless you were doing the TGP, because I think that it is much more dangerous and a significant harder pull to execute than what you're going to be seeing on screen right here. So for those who are just listening, it's like the pull whenever you go left, not through the Frog Gauntlet, instead you go up the ramp, is you Mind Soothe past the first 2 Shock Troopers because we don't want to pull those, and then you pull every single mob all the way like down the hallway into like the corridor before the next like Shock Trooper mini boss pack, and then you like line them around the corner, and then you get all of those frogs grouped up.
Yeah, on Fortified, on a lower key, on anything like that, if your lust is available, you can send it on this pull, or if you're doing the Frog Gauntlet pull, you can send it on that pull. Or you can send it on the pull after this with the mini bosses before the Gulping Goliath. But usually you do need to press it kind of as soon as it becomes pressable, or else you might be giving up a lust in the dungeon if you're going to be going to the timer. So
yes,
it is definitely something to be aware of. I think that both sides are actually pretty well balanced as well. I think that if you have a preference for either one, they definitely do both work. But I would say this one's probably the one that's a little bit easier.
If you think they're well balanced, then I think that this is much faster, because like that is a technically significantly easier pull than the frogs dropping down out of the sky onto you, and like having to. The problem is like it's difficult to make sure that those frogs are stacked, where it's like much easier to make sure that the second pulls, the other pulls, frogs are stacked.
Yeah, the frogs are definitely the dangerous part on either side. And it's like, do you want to risk 18 frogs or something, or do you want to risk 8 frogs total? And 8 is much more doable, but again, it's probably a little bit faster to do the right side, especially if you have like a very consistent big slow like Frost Mage.
Oh, if you have a
the
slow,
right side's pretty good.
Yeah, the right side's really good. It's like, what's the only slow that you have right now? Like Bear Slow?
Yeah, you can play Infected Wounds. Your mage can talent
Troopers?
slow. Yeah.
This is demonic that you took Shock Troopers into this pull, by the way.
This is a good
This
pull
is pretty
with
normal,
Lust.
I feel like.
Yeah, I do this pull with Lust though. At least on when I have it.
Honestly,
this is Tyran, so it's like it makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit.
Yeah, on 4 this is really hard for sure.
So what are you doing on this pull? Are you CCing the Shock Troopers and then just kicking the fire mini boss, or are you letting the fire mini boss cast on you and then just only kicking the Cauterize?
I am eating a lot of the mini boss bolts in
Yeah,
this.
sure.
Like I didn't really even organize it, but in theory, what you should do is just use stops for the shock troopers and then only kick the mini boss.
Okay.
Yeah,
I can
I've
buy that.
also never had to bother too much with actually assigning kicks to Pyretic Blast or whatever, because you're just tanky enough with this many targets that it doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
Even though,
Bear has
yeah,
the rare defensive funnel built in right now.
yeah,
I would say that this is what you see on screen. I would not do if you're not in a coordinated group, and I would honestly not do it unless it's tyrannical. Playing
yeah,
this,
or with
playing this
Lust.
on Fortified, particularly the shock troopers. There's potential for the shock troopers to one-shot people.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
for
do think
sure.
with Lust you can send this pull or a pull like it on Fort, but I definitely wouldn't do it without it.
I think you're losing a Lust if you send it on this poll on Fortified, but maybe.
Yeah, I
not.
guess it depends a little bit on how you're progressing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next boss, Gulping Goliath. Usually, I think one of the more straightforward ones. You kind of just want to stack as a group and move, and use your cooldowns intelligently.
I like to move through the boss.
Yeah,
I think that moving. I think I typically find that moving through the boss is easier for dropping the frogs.
the meta comp does have
Yeah.
a lot of buttons for keeping them stacked under. You have Vortex, Typhoon, Evoker Racials, those sorts of things. So it's it's usually a pretty easy thing if your tank is paying attention. Most of it does come down to you as the tank, you can always just move the boss a little bit further as well if you know it's going to be a while before the gulp from any of the casts. But yeah, it was one of the I would say the simplest boss fight in here probably.
Yeah, I think the easiest way I control it in pugs is I just put down 2 markers and say always go back and forth, just like the first boss.
Mhm.
So it's like, I've seen the tank do this before. I know what he's going to do on this boss too. And then also you can rotate Typhoon and Vortex if you're playing Bear. Just send one on each wave and then move the boss pretty far to account for their movement before he does his gulp. But you also have to factor in what classes are going to do in your group. If you have a good knowledge of what classes do, then you're going to be like, oh, I have a frost mage. I'm not going to move very much because these frogs are going to be super, super slow.
Landslide also kind of owns.
Yeah, landslide, upheaval. A lot of different effects are randomly going to be good against these, and like you said, Troll, a lot of it is predicting, because if you don't have those effects, you can just move the boss extra. But if you move the boss extra and then it starts casting further away, and the mobs are still too far back because they got CC'd or whatever, that feels pretty bad.
If you have a melee in your group, you should overmove the boss. I think that typically we're looking at this from a ranged perspective, where we're looking at triple wizard meta a lot of the time. If you have a melee in your group, you should overmove the boss to where they're not going to get melee by the frogs.
Yeah, and high keys, the danger becomes the frog's initial melees, not the actual poison damage.
Right.
They will actually just almost one-shot you at some level.
100%. Okay, after this we have the Gauntlet, which you've alluded to being a skip, and that is one of the strengths of the Mind Soothe, is that you can skip this entire area if you want. Dragonkin are Mind Soothable, so you literally just Mind Soothe every single mob and get down to the bottom here, and this is all the count that we're skipping. If you don't have that, you can't even Shroud this, because I think there's True Sight on some of these mobs.
Yes, the Dragons of True Sight.
Yeah.
I was about to say that. It's you can't even skip this with Rogue. It's only Priest.
Yeah. Which they need to make True Sight mobs resist Mind Soothe as well. I bet that's gonna be the next the thing they do to clamp down on the skips of these, because they gave a bunch of mobs True Sight after the Shroud meta in some previous seasons, but now this I think is gonna force that change.
I think they've over True Sighted a bunch of mobs.
Yeah,
honestly.
or just pull back on
agree.
True Sight. That would also be cool.
I will say that I think that they put too much True Sight in these dungeons just in general, and I think that Shroud definitely can be overpowered, but I think with how they've been designing dungeons, there is a route where you hold W through most of these dungeons and you get 100% enemy forces outside of Halls of Infusion for some reason, but pretty much all the dungeons you're able to hold W and then you get 100% enemy forces.
Yeah.
And so I think that Shroud and Mind Soothe should exist to allow you to pull uniquely, or same with Invis Potions. I don't think it's one of those things that necessarily needs to be changed. I do think that True Sight could probably be tuned down a little bit, though.
Right. I guess that would probably be the better way to achieve some comp equality. Would be to tone down True Sight incidents in these dungeons. It is definitely worth noting that this is probably the dungeon that is the worst to just do a whole W route, because you're gonna have to fight an extra dragon. Those dragons are really giga
Two
nasty.
extra.
Especially,
Yeah.
dude, if you don't have a priest and you can't mind see them, you also can't mass dispel the deep chill, which is so cursed.
Yeah,
It's a
dude,
massive
priest-
dot.
Wait,
Priest is so
Yeah.
insanely required for this dungeon hike.
Yeah.
It's unreal.
If you for some reason are caught here without a priest, you should know that the deep chill can be cleared by any movement, like freedom effects or disengage with the disengage thing talented. Anything that like clears slows and stuff off of you will clear the dot of the deep chill as well. So that is at least some help.
It doesn't prevent like application. Like
you'll
some
take
other
the
times
initial
do freedom
damage,
things,
but
right?
you won't. Yeah, you can clear the dot with it.
Okay, so it's not like what was it like? Azure Vault had the big stone dudes that you could just freedom.
Yeah, that one you could freedom.
Oh, yeah.
Because the initial hit. Okay, I don't know. It's
was the
different.
root or
was
something.
like
I don't know what to
slow
tell you,
on
man.
it.
It's
Yeah, root. It's a root.
Yeah. This one worked this way. That one worked that way.
Yeah. It's just
who
I
knows
mean,
how it happens in this way.
The initial hit of the frigid chill is like pretty hard. That's what I was asking.
Yeah, you are still going to take that, but at least you can clear the dots, because your healer's going to dispel somebody, and then you want to like, freedom somebody if you can, and I think you can blink out of it on mages.
If you're evoker, okay. If you're playing with like a composition that has like a out of combat CC, such as like a cage, a sap. Well, actually, no, you can't even do sap. It has to be cage or sleepwalk.
Yeah.
You can technically skip that dragon pack that's at the bottom of the bridge if you out of combat CC the far like right mob, and then the rest of the mobs are suited. Then you just like slide through. That is good in a couple of potential instances. If your lust is available and you have all of your offensive CDs, you'd rather just like fully send that straight into the boss and then come back and do that pack after the boss.
True. This boss is very hard. This is a very high HPS fight. You gotta like really pay attention to when your healer is not in cooldowns as well.
Oh
You
my
gotta
God.
press your buttons at good times.
We're griefing.
Yeah, so this boss is all about just I mean, it's basically just an HPS check, right? That's kind of what goes on here. DPS check, HPS check, tank not get murdered by frost shock check.
Yeah.
And
The
then,
frost shock's almost killing me on 28. in this
I think the
video.
big thing about this boss as well is that whenever the hailstorm cast comes out, all of these shattered tombs explode in a pretty big AoE. So if you try and get safe by one of them that's near a dangerous one, you're gonna die. So that's the big thing to be careful of, is make sure you never try and get
Yeah.
safe, but have one of those shattered ones nearby, because they explode in a big AoE.
Yeah, I guess we didn't mention it yet, right? But the way you can tell is there's a beam over the good ones.
Mhm.
There's like a beam of light that just is the easiest way to tell that this one's still good. I can use it for LOS. If they don't have a beam, that means they're cracked, or you can like kind of see that they're cracked with your own eyes. It's pretty hard to see, to be honest.
Dude, I actually never knew that there was a beam of light. I always just look
Yeah,
and see if it's
Ain't
cracked.
no
or not.
way.
There, you can see. You can see over on the one that's on screen now.
I just look at the cracks on it. I'm like, oh, this one's good.
It's easier to see if you're out in the like dark area of the room rather than like the blue pool area.
I play a fucking range. I'm not looking at anything else anyways.
Tank, do mechanic for me. I don't know what's going on.
True. And then after this, we've got the boss gauntlet, which does feature another dragon. Usually we pull up to that dragon as well. In most cases, I don't know if we do that in this, or if you do that.
Oh
yeah,
god,
you do.
I think
Do
I
you
may
full
have.
pull this? Oh my god, we
This is a
died.
funny moment. Okay, yeah. We've been
I
there.
think I tried
we've all
to
been
do the
there.
entire gauntlet in one pull to save some time, and I died.
Okay, so that led to this being a reset dungeon. My footage. Okay, it's fine. We go 27. Okay. Not to worry. Not to worry.
Typically, you want to just pull the first pack plus the dragon, especially if you have any kind of CDs.
Yeah.
Where do you like to stand as the tank, and how do you like to tank the dragon? So, for those who don't know, these waves that come crashing down the this area, like you can line them if you're on either like the center console or on like the side pillars and stuff like that. There's a question as to where the tank is supposed to stand because of the oceanic breath from the dragon, though.
Yeah, so at the beginning of the season, I thought it would probably be the play to put ranged in this spot where I'm standing, and I just flipped the dragon back around. But people generally didn't like to do that, so I just was like, I'll take the spot if nobody wants it. So I stand near this pedestal and just avoid the waves for free most of the time. Storming obviously makes it incredibly hard, as you can see in this clip.
Yeah.
But usually you just have to walk out during one of the, I think, Earth Shakers circles on the ground, and that's it. But yeah, you definitely want to be in a way where you aim the breath away from the group. So that's probably the best way to do it, is how I do it in this.
Yo. One problem is that if that rumbling earth like makes you dodge out into the wave, it's kind of bad, but
dude, I'm trolling at this
it's
point.
all good.
Oh
all
my
good.
god.
We're fine. Not to worry. Then you get the mini boss. The mini boss, you can let it cast and spell steal the shield. But the inundates are going to one-shot unfortified, make sure that people have big defensives up against those.
Inundate's also 45-yard range, so
Yeah,
you can outrange it pretty. You can outrange it pretty easily if you're paying attention. I wouldn't recommend doing that until you're doing, 26 fortified or something like that. Maybe 25 fortified. I think that like 25 fortified, 26 fortified, you can like just use personals and get through it. Especially if you're playing like a composition that, with an Augavoker particularly, that has a lot of tools to be able to deal with the Inundate.
Yeah, Inundate's a nasty cast. We were rotating like the augmentation, short rallies, active, or what's it called? AM by the HPAL, all kinds of group CDs, Zephyr for people to live. Because otherwise you're going to get one shot if you don't have something covering your health.
Okay, last boss is pretty. Also, I would say conceptually simple, although there's a few traps that get people. So you've got everybody grouped up together to spawn all those globules nice and stacked up, and then you kind of get far away. But even here, like, look at those globules under boss. Those are very threatening for the tank. So as a tank, always be on the lookout for the under boss globule, and just send every defensive against that blast from the boss, because that's the only thing that does damage in the whole fight. And they're like a minute or something apart, so you get stuff back. For the ones in the future phases.
What's crazy about the tank portion of this boss, if I move any farther from the boss here, someone will die.
Yeah.
Like I have to be exactly where I am relative to the center of his hitbox, because they made the hitbox so tiny for some reason.
Yeah. Dude, once it cast the knockback on me and then hit the whole group with the AoE because nobody was in range. After it knocked me away and then started casting Squall. It was really annoying.
Peak boss design.
Yeah. The gauntlet, of course, just be careful on your way back. And then how do you like to handle the 4 ads that are channeling into the boss once you make it back?
I do a really clean way of doing it, and I'm sure we'll see it here, where even in Pugs, no voice, I say, go stand next to an ad and then kick as soon as I kick mine. And so like you don't have to communicate for this. If everyone kicks at the same time, then one AoE CC that's like kind of a big radius can reach the whole first set. And so I typically, like on Guardian Druid, I'll just use Roar first once everything gets pretty grouped.
Yeah, notably you got threat on everything as well, so they would all come to you in the middle, which is another important part of this, right? Is once you kick, you get like 3 seconds until they start their inundate, so you need them all to be running towards the middle of the room. But yeah, once you do that, then their casts are synced, and you can literally do 2 AoE CCs or whatever, and they're all dead.
I will say that I think it's really easy to get 3 grouped up immediately, and if you really are worried, you can get the 3 grouped up immediately, and you can have your if you're running with a priest in this dungeon, which I think most groups are going to end up doing, you can just like dominate mind and move it all the way, and then disable dismiss the dominate. That way, it brings the mob all the way into melee.
That's true. That's also a really good idea if you want to wait for CDs to come up a little bit. Like let's say you're 1 minute 30 from the end of the timer on the dungeon, and this is going to be your last burn opportunity on the boss. Then you want to wait the intermission out without giving the boss more stacks if possible. So dominate mind, you kind of just like chill until dominate mind runs out, then kill the last ad, and then go boss with all CDs.
Yeah, often you're going to get lust on Tyran on like the 3rd phase, and you need to kill it during that phase often to make the timer. So if you're on a really high key on pace or whatever, but often just whenever you reach here, it's if you got lust, you hit it on whatever phase you get to with it. And yeah, I don't know. It's a pretty rinse and repeat at that point. Any other tips for that boss either of you have?
There's a couple bosses this season where tanks want to use taunt as soon as they get knocked away, or 100%. Like as they're running back in. So like when you get knocked back, you pop a couple defensives because that's the only tank you had in the fight. And then you also want to taunt like the moment you get knocked back, so that there's no possible way he melees anybody while you're briefly out of melee range. And the way taunt works is that typically will force the target to only target you for 3 seconds. And so that's why that works in that case. And the same thing with the Worm Boss and Eltharian's Lair. As soon as you're running back in from the, whatever it's called, the tongue thing, you just press taunt while you're running in.
Spike tongue?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, it's a good tech. Sometimes bosses, you got to be careful. You can't use it. Like sometimes bosses will still do their thing that they cast if they can't hit somebody. But in this case, yeah, you do definitely want to make sure the boss is under a taunt effect whenever you're not in melee range for any reason. All right, cool. That's our Halls of Infusion little look see thing. Anything for the whole dungeon that either of you wanted to mention as well that I skipped past as we ran through?
I think first 10 minutes is probably the hardest part of the dungeon. If you can get through the first boss, you're probably able to see to the end of the key. Like the timer's a bit tough, depending on what level you're doing, right? But I would say the first 10 minutes, particularly that trash, is always going to be the most brutal part. Try to play it a bit safer. If you have Spore Cloak, giga broken for that first area.
Yeah, true.
Giga broken for that first area.
Some would say broken in all areas.
It's yeah.
First area
like
as well.
Yeah.
All right, we've got a couple of Q&A questions to get to, but first, we get to thank our supporters over on the Patreon. They include support specs or raid buffs with skill expression. Thanks to the 10.1.5 class changes, we were able to defeat Mythic Rashok and Zaskarn. Nevernude, Ja, King of Skills, Dratnos' Dino Pillow, Chromed, Trekkie, Chewy, Dratnos, I'm awesome. Tettles, are you fucking awesome, Trell? Nobody is fucking anybody here. That's a lot of swear words. Wow. Salty Zenny, ZivXX, Necros, Tankdill, Nevik, Eevee, Year of the Sphere is extended into 2023. Bless up. No trick. I forgot I was subbed here. Dymat, Rework Mistweaver, Alt Raid Update. I picked Arms Warrior so I can flex on people. Get it? Art flex arms, like.
Yeah.
Nix.
We got it. Thanks.
Lurka, have you ever tried Korean fried chicken? Gallic, Brusif, Dratnoshar's Abyss, Feels Okay Man, M Sanity, Xena, Rogue is now good enough for prog, but still bad enough to be sat for SLG, bless up, Red Color, YouTube.com/Workbringer, Alphabet Soup, Druid Friends of Nevermore, number one Simsky for Trelsky, Lurka is leaving the East Coast for the West Coast. Does anyone have any recommendations for fried chicken over there? The Thunder from Down Under needs his chicken fix. Milk, Sife, Pone, Windwalker Monks deal with nerfs by rolling with the punches. Thesaurus.com is a powerful tool. The Marsh Hare, Mage Rework Waiting Room, that's another, that one's going to join the SLG one. Is outdated name. Thank you for listening to the Titanforge podcast, as brought to you by Daddy Dratty, Grampy Trelsky, and the Tettles Effect. Big Head Small Brain, King's Honor Fellow Horde, it's me, your newest guild member. Juniper, Best X-Fac Ever, Dorky Guide for Vengeance, DH is a vibe, time to re-roll back from DPS again. Rat Run, Jatto and Honey Chunk Forever, Chauncey, that moment when your tank says, now where's my ranged at during Jade Serpent Dragon Boss and bricks your key. I guess a season appropriate one there would be that moment where your tank doesn't taunt when they get knocked away on Halls of Infusion boss and breaks your key.
I still think Treemouth is like the most
yeah.
Or like the first boss or the last boss of Brackenhide 2, they just dust your group on pull if they don't move.
Yeah. Feral Druids in the MDI, you've got to be kidding me. Oh, you don't have that yet? Boom. Sire Dematicus solemnly swears he's up to no good. The small mammal living in Dratnos' shirt. Sapphire. Pogmentation evoker buffs make me feel like a real man. Rework DK's Please Blizzard, I will buy you an extra large popcorn from the movie theater. This person spelled theater wrong, though. That's not where the R and the E go. Is it me, or is Tettles a real-life Fry from Futurama? And Wolfram Alpha Gamer, which that's...
Dude, is that based off of your most recent video? Oh my god. I saw it, like... I didn't watch the whole video. I saw like part of it. I was like, what is this? What is he doing?
I graphed some... I used Wolfram Alpha to like approximate damage profiles of augmentation versus a regular spec. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Turns out some of the Warcraft log stuff I was looking at was kind of wrong for...
Fake news?
Well, it was a little bit fake news, but also... the thing held if you looked between like Mythic and Heroic or Mythic and Normal, for instance, but it didn't actually hold between like 90th percentile Mythic and 10th percentile Mythic. And that was just like an artifact of some of the Evoker stuff still not being calculated properly. But, it still properly holds. We'll check in a couple weeks. They still haven't fixed all the augmentation stuff is the thing. Apparently there's going to be a new partition once they feel like they've fixed enough of them, but there's still bugs they're hunting down on... augmentation attribution.
There's issues with like Malefic Rapture doesn't work appropriately.
Yeah, apparently that's one of them. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Weird.
Like it's completely broken with AF or something. Just doesn't work.
All right, our first question comes from Area in Discord that says, coming from a casual mythic guild, I have a question that will come up after hearing another discussion about loot in raids and top-end guilds. Why do guilds choose to deprioritize tanks and healers when it comes to trinkets like Beacon and Torch? Don't they do the same amount of damage no matter which character uses them? Especially in this X pack where tanks very rarely use a defensive trinket in raids, and since they are likely to be ones living the most during prog, why do guilds still choose to not give them at least equal chance on them, especially crit versus stacking ones? The good guilds do give that.
Question.
The good guilds do give that trinket to their tanks first. Actually, the Beacon of the Beyond.
Yeah.
Like you look at Race to World First Guild, my guild, the first ones actually go to tanks there. The reason that bad guilds don't do that is because they're used to not giving loot to their tanks. Because with stats, it's generally you're gonna get more bang for your buck giving them to other people. But with Beacon in particular and Grief Torch, those actually you get not only equal bang to your buck, but actually often better bang for your buck, giving it to your tank. So that the guilds do, actually, the good ones do.
I mean, we gave a torch to our tank for Razageth because we were like looking at our sides and we were looking at our split and we're like, oh, where can we actually get the best value out of this Grief Torch? And was like, okay, actually it should be going to our DK tank here. Like he should have it. That way he can torch this specific mob or whatever.
Not to mention, like, Razageth had some very, very short burst windows that you had to have big damage for. And, like, if you're putting a channeling trinket on a DPS, they're not going to do their own damage. They just choose a different damage source instead, where you could have the best of both worlds by putting that on a tank, which wouldn't do good damage during that burst window without it.
Yeah, that's like an opportunity cost argument. And there's also an opportunity cost argument for that versus the next best trinket is a smaller gap for DPS than it is for tanks, which means that, like, medium term, you're going to get more value out of it on a tank.
Okay, so speaking more broadly, why do top-end guilds deprioritize gear on tanks and healers?
Yeah, so in other items, it's usually because, like, you know, if I give 450 chest piece to my tanks, that's going to give me 300 DPS, and if I give it to a DPS, it's going to give me 1,000, right? And tanks living or dying, and healers healing or not, right? And having people live or not tends to be kind of binary, especially among the high-end content, where you can just kind of, like, they got to figure it out. They got to play good, right?
Yeah, you can figure out how to do it basically with whatever gear you have.
And so you're just trying to maximize DPS across the raid.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. All right, our next question comes from Hey, it's Fred, who says, "What would y'all's thoughts be on replacing raid buffs as a default skill for given specs and classes, and into a single buff talent tree that all classes have access to, yet talent points would be awarded from the number of unique class and specs that you have in the group?"
That's interesting.
It's kind
of
like
the more unique specs you have, you just like unlock more raid buffs, period.
Yeah, it's like you can choose N total raid buffs, where N is the number of unique classes and specs you have in the group. I mean, I think that would be better than the current version, which maybe isn't saying much. I do think I don't think you necessarily want to move to a world where, like, going from 20 unique specs to 19 or 18 is penalized as well by that much, but one of the reasons they have the buffs is that they don't like us stacking specs, right? And of all the bad things it does prevent us from stacking more than a few of, like, a certain spec.
That would actually be really cool in Mythic Plus too. You could, like, pick whichever 5 raid buffs that you wanted for a key. That would be awesome. I love that idea.
Yeah, I do think it is a cool idea. I would want to maybe build in some way of not having, like, of maybe being up to 15 in raid and, like, up to 4 or something in M+. Or 5.
Dude, I just hate the raid buff design in raid in general. I think the raid buff design in raid is always, like, it's already super bad, right? And then you have a couple of classes that don't have a raid buff at all, which is abnormally bad for them because most people have a raid buff, and so then the specs that don't. I really feel like we've moved pretty far away from bring the player, not the class, and definitely more into bring the class, not the player. And this is specifically talking about raid buffs. Like,
yes.
This is not, like, contextual, like, for anything else. But the fact that you ask your best players to reroll to a specific class because you need that raid buff the next tier is a very unfortunate reality of the situation, and not something that, like, they're playing a spec or a class that they would find fun in normal circumstances.
Yeah,
true.
I do appreciate the encouragement to not hard stack a certain spec. I think that is definitely an upside of it, but I don't think it is worth the downside of, like, hey, we're playing without a Demon Hunter, we are losing out on, like, 4% raid DPS as a result. That is rough. And also the downside of, like, hey, I'm playing a class that wears mail armor, so I
Yeah.
am just impoverished when it comes to being needed in raid. All right. That's the end of our Q&A for this week. Next week we will do a longer Q&A as probably, I guess, one of our main topics along with our dungeon. So if you have any further questions or any follow-ups or anything you want to talk about at all, there can be a little bit wider range. We'll pick some different ones. So send them on in for next week. Again, Twitter, Discord, good places to do that. Discord, just a good place to be in general. We'll have links to all of the stuff discussed, the mage guides, the cool stats posts and stuff, all in the description as well of the audio and video, wherever you found this. So do go check those out as well. But that is going to be all for us this week. We will see you all next week. Goodbye.
Thanks for watching.